So we are now much more interconnected than we've ever been, and we need to think broader about the world, even though it's our world, but collectively the world. So whatever ideas you have, think about them macro and micro at the same time. Because narrow thinking and narrow vision, it doesn't apply as much anymore in the world, and it's changing too fast. With that, I open it up to Q&A. Intellectual capital, by definition, and there's several other authors that have talked about it, and experts out there as far, they would quantify it as most consensus is that it is human capital. And in this way, it's been used a lot in the HR and human resources, because a lot of very, very wise companies and organizations used to say their intellectual capital was their human capital, because let's say, and I'll define that when you say intellectual capital. Of course, from intellectual capital, you can spur an idea. But what happens every day? It'll tell you how the world measures intellectual capital very clearly. Every time Steve Jobs makes an announcement in the last 2 days, the stock price of Apple goes up or down. One person. He's one man. He is just one man. Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple. He's one man. Every time he makes a statement, the stock goes, well, I don't know if I'm going to be sick, you know. The stock goes up and down. Why is Wall Street measuring his every word? Because they look at him as the head of that intellectual capital. If you took out 10 of the top people in any organization that ran the operations of that organization, that ran that business, that, to your question, to your answer, is the intellectual capital. It is their mindset. Go ahead. Well, part of it is, like we said, intellectual capital isn't that one person, it's the legacy of those people, meaning that in his mind, hopefully he's taught 3 or 4 other people to be the same. And that kind of brain trust, so to speak, that brain group trust is the intellectual capital that will hopefully stop the stock market. As you said, if they knew that he's going to die, it may drop, but it can actually recur, boost itself back up to a normal level, given the fact that some of his leaders or his trainees or mentors, people that have thought the same way he does, they formulate their ideas, they're able to reach their ideas, and they understand that. And as long as the market, the stock market in this case, are the people that are judging him by his stock price, they're comfortable with these people, then that intellectual capital moves forward. So the intellectual capital isn't just, it's not something, it's the way our minds work. It's an idea that can come out of, be the output, but intellectual capital exists in all of us right now. It's the way you're functioning. It depends if you apply that capital. And that's where I'm heading to the next thing. I believe every human being has intellectual capital, but very few people apply it. They just kind of operate in a robotic way, and society used to cater that kind of input and economic growth. But now, because the world is changing so fast, that intellectual capital is going to be needed to sustain even personal and economic development for each and every individual in this classroom as well. How does intellectual capital and the Bank for International Ideas help this, let's say, a impoverished place in South Africa? So in one of the chapters is talking about South Africa, where they don't have any infrastructure, any technology. Let's say this is a rural part of Africa, okay? And by submitting an idea, they're actually able to get water irrigation, purification of water. Still, the basic necessities still apply to intellectual capital. Because let's say you have, in theory, a villager, and a villager has been mining this village for 5 years. Let's say she's a woman, she's female, she's mining the village, her husband helps her mine the village, they know the village, but epiphany has hit, she's got an idea, she spawned something. She has a better way of improvement of the way they process their water. Let's say they were still picking the water up in many buckets and carrying it down. Now, the first thing is, oh, well, why don't you just put a truck there and just drive it? Well, maybe for that area, they don't have any automobiles. It's too expensive for them. So she's come up with an innovative way maybe to carry it, and without animals, without a donkey, so to speak. And just let's say something of and I'm just hypothesizing here, let's say she's figured out a way to get skateboards, and that's enough to pull it and carry the water, where she doesn't have to hold the water, but it's efficient enough for that area because they don't need animals, because it's too costly to put animals in that rural area. It's too costly for automobiles. So where the West and the practical thinking would say, well, just have a car in there. This is where something like this begins to see where we can help society collectively. And once you put in a kind of a global brain trust, so to speak, just like a company has been having these brain trusts, if you've got a global brain trust for humanity, not only can I think we collectively can solve some of the bigger problems that have faced humanity, but we also have a legacy if anything ever happened to the earth.